All right, good morning and welcome to the channel. I think we are live now. So today we're going to be talking about low income housing for seniors, and we're also going to be talking about HUD housing for seniors in Section 202. And we're going to cover quite a bit. And I think the way that we're going to start the video is going to be with an explanation as to what Section 202 is from the development side. And then we're going to talk about what it can do for you personally if you're 55 plus or 62 plus with Section 202. We're also going to be speaking about subsidy housing, affordable housing, low income housing, and all the arenas wrapped together. So this would be a bit of a long video. If you get bored, just pause it, do something else, and then come back to it later. All right, so first we need to go through some of the technicals, and it's a little bit boring, but it's important you understand, your federal, state rights, and other things when you're dealing with programs and housing authorities. So it's important that we cover those issues. And before we get started, I'm going to make a few introductions as far as I'm concerned and what I do. That way, you guys have a fine understanding if you have questions later. Okay, this is a live video. That means you can chat with me. I don't know if you can do it on your phone, but I know on computers, laptops, TVs, and so on, most of you should be able to chat with me while this is live. So, myself, I am Jay Roulette. I am a Section 8 consultant. And what I do is work with people around the nation every year, around 1,000 people, young and old, whether you're disabled, whether you're a senior, and so on. And so I'm going to put up some links that I've already put in this live chat, and you can also find these in the description of the video, whether it's now or later. Okay. And so, anyways, as I mentioned, I work with clients and so on that are having difficulties navigating the system, trying to help them through there. The pandemic's been difficult, so. All right, beyond that, I also own section8consulting.com, and that'll help you generate some of the information you're interested in seeing and other things like reviews and so on if you choose to have somebody assist you. Always remember that HUD, the Housing Authority, and 211 will gladly provide whatever answer you're looking for. However, they're not always the best of that resource. That's kind of why I exist, but that's nor here or there. All right, let's get into the summary of this information. These are a few technicals, and then we're going to get on the stuff that you guys are actually looking to hear. As a purpose and summary of this, Section 202 helps expand the supply of affordable housing with support services. Some of you might identify with that as being wraparound services. And it doesn't just mean things like Meals on Wheels, or that I'm suggesting that any of you need to go to an assisted living or a nursing home. But 202 covers a broad range of things. It provides very low income housing for the elderly with options that essentially allow them to live independently, but within an environment that provides support and activities. Now, remember, you can deny those services. Again, you're just seeking out a housing choice voucher through your housing authority, or maybe you're doing a low income property that is tenant based. Now, whether or not you accept all the extra things, that's your business. All right. And just to get into a few things that they could provide as an extra outside of you actually having a voucher and getting low income housing, cleaning, cooking, transportation, and some of the more basic stuff. I also want to say that this program is very similar to supportive housing for persons with disabilities, and that is also known as Section 811. Now, let's keep in mind that Section 202 and Section 811 are two different animals, and what divides that is age. Preferably 62 and better should be pursuing Section 202. For those of you that are younger than 62, Section 811 may be a great possibility. So there is this concept of age and disability kind of being blurred, and same thing when you reach a certain age that you're able to get 202. So HUD provides an interest-free capital advances to private nonprofits to sponsor and finance the development of supportive housing for those that are elderly. And these capital advances do not have to be repaid for a long time. So from that perspective, you're a landlord watching this, that's what it is as a technical. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about how it affects you as far as those of you that are looking to get this. Section 202 is a low-income housing program, essentially, as I mentioned, for elderly that provides affordable apartment housing. But you can also utilize your vouchers with duplexes, homes, private landlords, tenant-based, project-based, and so on. There's many different ways. As I had mentioned, there are wraparound services and supportive services you could potentially get depending on your situation, but that shouldn't be your primary focus. Mainly, the housing is used for purpose of having a rental assistance attached to them. In other words, anytime you receive a voucher, it's a discount, and that discount is more or less rental assistance, is it not? So, the way participants actually do what they actually get in the program is you're usually paying 30% of your net income for rent. So fixed income, Social Security, disability, survivor benefits, 30% of that would go towards your rent and consider your bill paid to be there. With this program in place, LA members 62 and older can live independently for more, for an extended period. And often they try to commingle this with nonprofits for the wraparound service, just in case you guys are curious. So let's talk about eligibility real quick, and then I'm going to speak to you in plain English because I know you guys are probably getting tired of the technical. But so you need to basically follow these basic requirements in order to be able to get into Section 202 program. The total income of the household must be meager. So to give you a good example around the nation, many people make different amounts of money depending where you live. You could be in LA, you could be in New York, or you could be in Mississippi. So, they do tend to look at income ratio for households, which could be low as 50% of the area median income. So, if a bunch of folks live in your little town, say your town has 10 people, and five of those people are making 100,000, then they would suggest that the area median income at 50% would be 50,000. One member of the household must be 62. And so, this is a perfect example of how a whole family or two different families living in the same household, as long as you've got one person that is the age 62, then this is a good program. It can be anybody. It doesn't necessarily have to be the voucher holder. It only means that one person must be that age. Beyond that, your application steps for the eligibility begin with the application. And so I got to tell you this, when you're doing that and you're working with tenant-based properties, which means you're going to private landlords and using a subsidy, or you're going to the housing authority and receiving a voucher in that manner, or you're dealing with CES or coordinated entry system if you're going to be homeless or imminently homeless, then I think that it changes a little bit across the board. So what I'm going to do real quick is we're going to slow this down a little bit. I'm going to see if anybody's made any comments. All right, so we got a few here, and so I'm going to call out the names real quick, and then we'll see if we can answer a few questions. Felicia Cooley, Honey J, she says, thank you. How old do you have to be for Section 202? So you need to be 62, in some cases 55, but mostly 62 because it is a federal program. And she goes on to say that I just signed and I may have missed it. Well, you might have, but that's a determination that is made at the property level or at the housing authority level. Chandra Leeds, hi, we listen to you every time you have a new video, and thank you for what you do. You got a case of discrimination? Sorry to hear that. That represents about 30 to 40% of the cases I deal with are people that are dealing with issues of discrimination, and we end up having to deal with fair housing, filing claims with HUD, FHEO, and so on. All right, going back to this, now I want to talk to you broadly and plainly like I do in most videos, because that way we can all have a fine understanding. So let's review the possible ways at being a senior that you could actually do this properly. One, no matter where you live, every county has a housing authority. If it's a really big place, they may have several. And as a person that is 62 and older, you could go directly to the housing authority, fill out that application. They may or may not have a waiting list, and your age and your disability would determine how well you do with Section 202. Now, what I want to pull up are some things that are important that are going to help you figure out whether or not you have a very good case to move up further up the line, and whether you have a really bad case that would move you to the bottom of the line. Because let's be realistic. There's lots of old people. There's lots of old people with disabilities. So how do you distinguish your case better than others, so you don't end up being 85? Start at 62 and then wait till you're 85 to get this. We're going to talk about that. I got to pull up my own notes. All right, so here are some of the basic, and they call these preferences. I encourage you to look at it and know if you call the housing authority, they're never going to tell you what their preferences are, because if everybody knew that, there'd be a run on the building and everybody would try to shoot to the top of the list and get a voucher next week, So I'm going to pause for a minute before we get into these preferences and then answer a question real quick. Looks like we got Havoc 831. I'm on Social Security disability. Is it possible to apply for Section 8 in a different state, get accepted, and move there? How does that work? Well, it is possible. There's nothing stopping anybody from applying in any state. What's stopping you, what makes it so bad is really what you need to do is kind of establish residency or that you're working wherever you're trying to apply, because that represents a good core value of about 30% of how they're considering you. In other words, if you're in Florida and your goal is to go to Texas, they're looking to help the locals before they're looking to help you. And so the only way to kind of get around that shady deal is to somehow come up with a real street address, an address that would likely show that you lived in that state. Now, there's lots of ways to get around that, but for the sake of the rules, I think that there's a lot of clever ways to appear to be a lot of things, and I'll leave it at that. But what you want to do demonstrate is that you do have a physical address there, one way or another. What's interesting about that is when you deal with the homeless population, how do you think they view that? Do you think homeless people have an address? How do you determine whether or not they're really local and whether or not they just travel from, say, 3,800 miles away? So I think you'll see what I'm saying about you need to get that local preference. You need to produce some kind of real address. And if you can do that much, then I think your case is really good. 831, that's what we're going to call you. So let's talk about these preferences real quick. One, for those of you who serve the United States military, that is a big bonus on most applications. They do have a VASH or a VASH consultant with every housing authority. And of course, they do for those that actually visit the VA, Veterans Association. It might be able to process you somewhere under the HUD VASH and also the Section 202, depending on your homeless status and whether or not you're going to be imminently homeless. Another thing they consider is age, clearly. Seniors always do go first. Income per month. When you look at that, guys, there are several levels. There is broke, super broke, and then low income. So to put it plainly, guys, if you're averaging somewhere around 600 to about 1,500, you would be considered the best tier of low income. When you start exceeding 13 all the way up to whatever it could possibly be, then you start kind of leaving that low income area. And it all still contingent on the part of the nation you're in. $1,500 a month as a fixed income, a Social Security income may not mean jack out of New York, right? Because the cost of living is so big, people make a lot of money there, the ones that are working anyway. So I would say that loosely based on 600 to 1,500 as being a pretty good preference for you guys as far as the income ratio. So being local, having the lowest income or near being a fixed income does affect your application big time on pre-application. For most of you don't know this, when you apply somewhere, most housing authorities these days do what I call a pre-application and a primary. The pre is to get rid of people that are generally from out of town and those that don't even meet the low income criteria. And sometimes they even ask about age so they can determine whether or not you're a senior. If you get past the pre-application, then there's a primary application. It means they're interested in you at that point, but they're trying to figure out where you're going to be in this situation. Beyond that, one of the greater preferences you could potentially get is being imminently homeless or homeless. And that can mean anything from living in a homeless shelter, under a bridge, on a sidewalk, or even living in your car. Or it could mean that you're 28 days from being put out of your apartment or home. The homeless preference is a big one, and it does affect a huge portion of how high they'll consider you to move you through the system. But it by itself won't help you. And you have to stack a lot of these. It's like a cake. The more layers you add, the better. Those receiving Social Security disability, survivor benefits, and so on. So you're part of the system already, where you're receiving Medicare, Medicaid. All those factor in as you're already receiving county assistance. You're already in the system, and so that does help a little bit. Now, one of the preference that has the most power of all of them would be those that have suffered domestic violence. And I don't mean from family and friends. I mean from somebody you've been intimate with, somebody that you're dating, or somebody that you have prior been dating, and they've done something to you physically. They've done something possibly to you mentally. They've implied some type of threat that every month you don't give them a few dollars or something's going to happen to you. Or it's the type of person you can't shake loose. They're constantly following you, harassing you. So DV has the power to really make your case move twice as quick as anybody else. And that would include likely a person in a wheelchair that's 99 with cancer. A DV victim would likely be considered a higher priority than you. So a combination of homelessness, DV, and disability is a very killer combination to have. Why? it'll shoot you. It'll get you where you're going fast. Now the rest of them here, besides that is like I said, the local preference of being living in the county and so on for greater than 12 months. Now there are what I call on the cake again. So let's talk about the priority cake. Besides the layers of icing and all these different things you could have in there, they do consider Black Americans, American Indians, and other protected classes. Those are like sprinkles. They don't produce a lot of points, but they do help you. I know for as long as that I've been doing this, I've only seen one person nail every priority. It actually happened about 9 months ago. Well, this gentleman was a veteran. He was a black veteran with disability, had suffered domestic violence. We stacked all these things. So his case was about as good as you'll ever get it. He had the most compelling case that any person I'd ever seen. So having children, being pregnant do count for some things, but it's not going. It's just not the 1980s. They don't hand out vouchers based on the number of children you have, whether or not you're recently going to be pregnant, and all that. That's really not considered a preference anymore. I think because that system was overused, and it's just not in the right preference. Okay. And again, most of the people that are looking at the video as a senior are probably not having children or have their own children, anyways. All right, so let me say some good mornings to a few of my regulars that have been hanging around the channel for a couple of years, or possibly the whole 8 years I've been here. Deborah Payne, good morning. How are you? I see you've got one of our neat little blue badges. And Deborah Payne goes on to ask, and by the way, this is a live video, so I'm answering questions. What can you do if your housing get a tax credit, but intentionally giving you Illinois rental? Um, you kind of structured that question in a weird way, Deborah. What can you do if your housing gets tax credit, but intentionally? I'll tell you what, shoot me an email about that because I need to ask you some more questions in regards to that. Mr. is on. He says, good morning, Jay and Chad. There we go. Sonia Grinstaff, I'm in San Diego. Sonia, I know that already. You've been a long time member of the channel. I'm glad to see you here this morning. So, having a lot of preferences does help. But another thing that when you look statistically at applying and being a senior and having a fixed income, there's more than one way you can handle this. Most of you are under the opinion that a voucher is a voucher, and that's all there is. There's lots of things going on. Subsidy properties, which those are lich properties, where let me explain how that works. So you have the housing authority, you walk in, you can apply, and you get a voucher, you go and you have your choice of places. The other version is you walk in the housing authority, and the housing authority actually owns the building, and they call that project base. And then you have the housing authority, as I mentioned, with the voucher, and then they give you the choice to go pick a private landlord. So there's a difference, project based, and then giving you a voucher, and you figure it out with your own private landlord, right? Well, they also have subsidized. Subsidized, again, is the under Lich program where a landlord accepts tax credits over a number of years, 40, I believe, and then they have the ability to pull in your application and also your information, and then shoot that information up to the housing authority, and then you would be essentially what they call affordable or low-income housing, and process you that way without having that voucher. Some properties are mixed where they accept the voucher, or they can run your application back door through the housing authority. So there's lots of options there. And then there's a third option most of you never thought about, and that's going to be CES, Housing First, Coordinated Entry. And that again deals with people that are imminently homeless. And I think a lot of you are thinking that in a view that, okay, well, hardcore homeless. No, it just means that a lot of people are on the edge of being put out. I mean, the pandemic did produce millions of evictions. So I think that CES system can produce and kick out 3 types of vouchers. So in the old days, you used to be able to get a emergency housing voucher per se out of the housing authority. That's been moved over to CES. And so if you apply CES and answer the questions they ask through the BOSS system, BOSS, then you have a potential chance to earn emergency housing voucher. You could earn permanent supportive housing, which is the equivalent to Section 202 or Section 811, contingent on your age. And then the last one, which is the junkiest voucher, would be rapid rehousing. Now, they also offer another one that's even worse, which is what they call Shelter Plus. It's kind of like going to the homeless shelter, but you get a pillow with your rubber mat. You don't want that junk either. So, and by the way, the acronyms I was speaking about, we already know what a housing choice voucher is, or emergency housing voucher. Permanent supportive housing is PSH, and RRH is rapid rehousing. So all these acronyms and names you want to look up if you don't know. I made individual videos to let you guys know. All right. So I'm burning right through it, aren't I? I bet there's a few seniors on here right now that are pretty annoyed with me going this quick. So, Mary, how are you this morning? San Diego County, I have a voucher. Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. San Diego is a tough cookie to crack. I know the last couple of years, the list over there has been exceptional and its length, but there are some surrounding counties that produce vouchers at a reasonable time frame. Um, Lusa Petway. My mom passed. She was on Section 8. I put in many times from Brigham, Alabama. How do you get Section 8 faster? Well, you would literally have to rewind the video. And I should also let you know in my channel, there's about 400 videos, and there was about 8 of them dedicated to how to get housing, Section 8 housing fast, how to get Section 8 housing immediately, and so on. I would have to make a video inside of this video to kind of go into that, but yeah. Ms. Petway says, I go into the project, I just need help. You don't want to really go into projects. First of all, a lot of you guys are accepting the first thing the housing authority throws at you, which is project-based housing. We could get you tenant-based housing. We can get you a housing choice voucher. You don't have to live in the projects. None of my clients are going to be the clients I work with through section8consulting.com, my company. We don't deal with low-income areas. We don't deal with crime-ridden areas, prostitutes, drug dealers, and all that bullshit, okay? I don't recommend that for anybody, especially as a senior, because here's the deal. I get probably about 40 clients a year that call me, oh, yeah, I took the project-based housing. Now I'm scared to leave the minute the sun goes down. One lady was in tears because she had gunshots every day. She didn't know if she was going to be shot checking the mail. So I don't recommend project-based housing. And to be frank with you, as a business owner, I won't even help a person with that. If you guys sign up for project-based housing, let me tell you a few things that can be an issue with that. One, do you really want the landlord? Do you really want the housing authority to first be the person giving you the voucher and in control of you? Number two, they're also going to be your landlord. You see how badly that would go? Most of you know that when you call the housing authority, you rarely ever get a straight answer. They're not going to educate you anything. And there is an absolute perception from all of my clients, at least the people I've talked to, that almost everybody gets talked to like a $2 trick on 3rd Street when they deal with the housing authority. It rarely ends up in a good conversation. That's if you can even call them, if they're open, and you're dealing with condescending people that are rude, that honestly just don't give a damn what happens to you one way or another. So I got to tell you, getting a voucher from is one thing, but making them also your landlord's a terrible idea, which means that any problem you have, you're really not going to take it to them without them ending up blackballing you if they do that. Now, I'm not suggesting they do that, but I can tell you, I've worked enough cases where I've seen things go very badly with that. So if you want project-based housing, I mean, you certainly can do that, but it's like having $100, but and and thinking you can only afford to live in a place that takes $1. You're really just you don't have to do that. Faith Moore, listening. Good to have you. Good morning. How are you? So, one thing I want to bring up this morning, since we're talking about seniors and so on, I want to talk about a little update real quick. Many of you know me to inject my personal life into my videos. I have no problem with doing that. Sometimes we like to keep it a little spicy anyway. So, I want to give y'all an update. Now, most of you know from all these videos, hundreds of videos, that the cats, my passion to help cats and rescue cats and animals. Okay, so I know a lot of you are pet lovers. I was going to give y'all an update real quick on Pretty Girl. So I adopted a Siamese. I have a lot of cats. At this point, I have 18. And we got her. She in very terrible condition, and she's got a eye infection, ear infection, upper respiratory infection. She's anemic from blood loss and other issues. This is from poor ownership. Okay, bad. Well, it's a lot worse than that. We have been back and forth with a pet hospital for over a week now, and she was on her last leg yesterday. It was pretty bad, and she's lost so much weight and just terrible condition. But she took a turn for the better today. I brought her back, so they have her cap. They also gave her IV, and we're hoping that we can restore her. Many of you that have followed me have seen me take on animals that were in horrible condition, and a year later, you think that these cats could earn an award in a competition. So anyway, I thought I'd bring that up for those that are interested and those that are pet lovers. That's my personal injection in the video today. Um, Faith Moore says we need to talk. I'd love to talk with you or anybody else that's interested. That's what I'm here for. These videos I don't charge people to watch videos. I've made videos about every conceivable topic in relation to Section 8, HUD, housing authorities, and so on. I think that my library of videos actually rivals HUD itself. I don't think there's anybody that's made more videos than myself, but we'll see. Deborah Payne goes on to say, received an eviction for non-payment of rent. I applied for the Illinois rent program. The manager put the wrong tax ID on purpose. What can I do? You can appeal that and you can turn that case over to fair housing is what you can do in relation to that. What you don't want to do is complain to the same people that caused the problem. Because I can tell you they'll internally audit their own stuff and they always win their own cases. So you want to step that up out of the county. A housing authority, meaning county employees, step it up to the feds, which would be HUD, FHEO, and so on. So they can review the case, review the merits, see whether or not it's a violation of Title 24 or one of the subsections of U.S. Code, okay? And that way they can determine the best course for you. And I guess the other option is an attorney, which I am not. But I worked, after 20 years, I think I probably heard and consulted on so many different things in relation to the legal aspect of this that it's becoming a bit old. All right, all that being said, guys, so you have the three primaries. You can deal with housing authorities directly to get a housing choice voucher under Section 202, which is the people that develop these properties that exclusively accept seniors. Secondary to that would be private landlords, which would be TBAs or tenant-based housing, TBH. And through them, they allocate a certain number of units for those that are senior and that have lots of priorities, and you can be processed that way. Then you have CES, Coordinated Entry System, for those that are close to being homeless or already homeless, and they can offer you the emergency housing voucher, which could be converted over, into the Section 202 funding. And then you have the rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing in relation to those two things. Good morning, NY Candy. How are you today? And NY Candy says, hi, I have a voucher, would like to transfer. I hope you can help. So when y'all say transfer, move and all that, it's called portability. So let's do a mini lesson on portability and moving. So if you got a voucher and you're in this county or you're in a county in another state, then what you'd want to do is you initiate contacting what they call a portability specialist at the housing authority. You contact them, excuse me, can I speak to the portability specialist? From there, that portability specialist might fill out an RTFA packet, request for tenancy approval, and then they can speak to the forwarding housing authority and ask for the portability specialist there. And then you can determine whether or not they're able to bill or absorb you. Billing means you're over here and you move over there, and then they can send the bill back to the other state or other county. The absorbing part is you go from point A to point B, and you relinquish your voucher in one place, and then the forwarding housing authority will issue you their own. In other words, they're absorbing you into their system, and then that's that, okay? Of course, there's a lot more to that. If you do portability, moving, and all that, you want to make sure that your local economy can actually absorb you. Do they have enough low-income housing? Could you even utilize the voucher there? Number two, a voucher that may come out of New York where people make a lot of money, that voucher, if you transfer to another state, may not be worth that much. As an example, what if you lived in Mississippi and your little voucher is worth $400 a month, and you try to move that thing to LA, where the rent's are $2 or $3 grand, and so you have a worthless voucher. In other words, yeah, it's worth $400, but why would anybody want to accept that measly little voucher in a place that would require them to have to pump out more money to even make it work? So sometimes the amounts. And also, in addition to the vouchers, a lot of you guys have accommodations for a whole host of things. I want an extra bedroom. I've got a dog. I need a handicap wrap. These are all accommodations. I've got a sick child. And so your voucher has all these accommodations stuck to it, like strings. And as you port that from one place to another, well, the issue with that is they can actually clean off that voucher, cut all the strings, and then basically they're dispensing all those things. So what you get in one place doesn't necessarily translate into what you're going to get when you move. You start with a voucher with a lot of accommodations, and you port that voucher somewhere else that can remove all those accommodations, leave you with a bare bones voucher. Same thing with Section 202, Section 811. There's so many sections. Section 305. I mean, we go down probably around 138 subsections U.S. code because that's what it is, just like taxes. These are subsections. So for those of you that have not read Title 24, you should look that up on Google, start reading. There's a lot to it. All right, so more questions here. In Marcani says, hi, Jay. Well, hi, how are you? And then it is hard to get hold of affordability specialists, clearly, because they don't have to pick up the phone. That's why I always advise you guys to always write letters when you can, with the tracking and signature. That way you can make sure the portability specialist gets and receives that and has to respond. A lot of you guys are making your request over a phone. Look, there's no record of that, and that's probably the worst way to do it. Most websites that are professional for a housing authority should have either administration or a portability specialist there, in their name and email there. But sometimes, I admit, they're difficult to find. All right, guys. So I think we're coming closer to the conclusion of the video. I don't think there's a great deal more that I could potentially say about this. To be frank with you, I mean, we could go into this for hours and go very deeply into it. Keep in mind one thing, guys. We're going to talk about population just for a minute. When you're wanting to get a voucher or utilize a voucher, dealing with areas of the nation or counties where you have populations of about 100 to 150,000, you're more likely to get what you need from that county and area of the U.S. than you would if you go and attempt this in a big city with 1 million or 2 million people. The least amount in an area where you have a smaller homeless population, a smaller population period, that's pretty much statistically places that are going to be able to kick out vouchers quicker than bigger places. Okay, common sense, right? Beyond that, I think that next year, as we roll out of this pandemic, we're starting to see that they're building a lot of low-income housing, specifically to people that are 55 plus and 62 plus. So I think that a lot of new buildings are popping up. One thing what you guys need to be doing is talking with the city planner in the city that you're in, if you're going to get a voucher there, and ask about the new buildings that are within months of being built, because the city planner is going to know before anybody does. So why not be the first person there the minute they open the building? Scouring the internet for housing options, a terrible idea. Google's filled with scams out of Russia and China. A lot of those websites look real, but they're fake. If it doesn't say .gov, then you're probably on the wrong website. Second to that, housing authority most housing authorities have a list, but everybody and their mother has called that since 1983. You're not going to get anywhere with a housing authority list. In fact, the housing authority has the ability to offer project-based housing, so they can cherry pick the best clients and then give you a list of properties that are probably already notorious for nothing but nonsense. So I would suggest to you guys to use some of the more modern methods. If you have a Facebook, use Facebook Marketplace, but still use caution. I do not recommend Craigslist as a means to find a place ever, because there's more frauds rolling around in that than anywhere. And then Affordable Housing Online, which is a combination of the old company and Go Section 8 that have now been combined. And I'd say with around 80% or better accuracy that most landlords are there for the right purpose. And I'd say around 10 to 15% of them are frauds in there. So no matter where you're looking for housing, do not ever start handing out cash or gift cards or money orders unless you're walking into somebody's office at a legitimate address and they're processing your payment in front of you. That lady, she was convinced. They met at this big, beautiful building, and the guy accepted her money order. And then let me tell you what happened with that. He walked through the front door of that big, beautiful building. He walked right out the back and left with that money order. She just presumed that was his office. No, it wasn't. He just went straight through the building. There's people getting ripped off all left and right, man, especially in the pandemic, because people are desperate. So just be careful about that, guys. Faith Moore says, true. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I've kind of enjoyed talking with you. I think that we're going to do a Section 8 Q&A, which will allow you more opportunities to talk about a wider variety of topics and then ask the questions that you want. Of course, most of you already have my phone number and email, like half the nation already does. You do this long enough, you tend to attract the attention of half the country. So, and in my Kenny says, it is not easy finding affordable housing. There's nothing easy about anything that we're doing here. Everybody should know that. I tell every single client I work with, look, the first thing you need to understand about dealing with vouchers, low income housing, and so on, it is a gigantic pain in the ass. And even if you win the voucher or you get a key to a doorknob, the housing search itself is a secondary aspect. So you win the prize, you get a voucher, then you're off to the housing search, which is just as miserable. So you need to be able to plan adequately, make sure you have an absolute great understanding of how it works, and quit putting one egg in one basket. In other words, a lot of you guys are approaching one housing authority and you wait a lifetime. Why are we not approaching 20 different housing authorities? Why are we not trying to cross from the housing, just dealing with the housing authorities, but also going to subsidies, and not just subsidies and housing authorities? Why are we not trying to do applications with CES? Multiply your efforts so you're dealing with 30 different places under 3 different systems across 28 counties. Then you multiply your efforts by the number of special preferences, the more of those you meet. And then we talked about population of cities, and then the cities with the smaller homeless populations produce vouchers quicker. There's places in this country where they're issuing vouchers in 3 years. Now you add that with all these other factors, plus the fact that on the 3-year list, do you think you're going to be on the 3rd year or the 1st year, or do you think you're in the first 4 months? It's going around and probing housing authorities to see what they have, how quick they can issue, and whether or not you have good enough preferences to be the top 5% of consideration. So many things to consider, and those are just a few. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up because it has been a while since I made a video on here, and my voice is starting to strain a bit. So if y'all have questions, you know how to find me. I've been on YouTube 8 years, website 20 years. Most people in the nation know me. And my reputation is throughout the videos. There are comments, there are like buttons, and there's also reviews. Y'all can make of that what you wish. My reputation does not hinge on whether or not somebody gives me good or bad reviews. In fact, I encourage anybody to leave any review they want. I really honestly don't care about that. What's important is that we're able to try to get housing. And I got to tell you, the last couple of years with this pandemic has been the most challenging part of my career ever. As a matter of fact, I probably fall asleep once the pandemic leaves, because I can't think of a tougher market to try to help people in, and it's not always successful. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. Anybody selling you the delusion that they can help you get a voucher without actually doing it is crazy. Even my success rate is not that great. I always tell clients, look, there's no perfect reputation with this. Around 10, 15% of the time, I absolutely fail to produce anything for my clients for a whole lot of different reasons. Sometimes clients don't participate. Some have mental illness and lots of things. But if you go around selling, I'm an expert at this and I'm an expert at that, and you can't produce results, then, hey, it is what it is. So I'm letting you guys know. Even my own clients understand that sometimes cases just don't work out. I don't have that kind of reputation. So, if I'm producing 83% of the time, that's about the best odds you'll ever get, because there aren't a lot of me left. There's probably only a handful. And most of them rather sit on Fox News, or other news agencies like ABC and do their telereporting about Section 8 than actually get their hands dirty. So that's how that goes. All right, guys, I've enjoyed talking about it, seeing you all, and we'll make another video in about a day or two. And then this time, I think we're going to talk about some of the general programs and try to answer people's questions, because there's a whole lot around the nation that haven't been answered. All right, I've enjoyed seeing you all, guys. Have a nice day.